Okay, moving on to number 2, a little bit more tangible form of abuse, no less insidious. It's the psychological and mental abuse. This is where we enter the domain of how tricky the narcissist is with his or her manipulations, right? And this occurs, and I'm looking at some notes I have put together for myself because it's such a rich subject. I don't want to miss anything. This is where another subject exposes you to a form of trauma that again causes anxiety, depression, and then has later repercussions in form of CPTSD, which is the complex post-traumatic stress disorder. If you are new to the subject, please take a look at this. This can save your life. This can save your sanity. Complex PTSD. Take a look at the work put together by Pete Walker. He has a fantastic book. I believe it's called CPTSD From Surviving to Thriving. It is a lifesaver, and more people are beginning to talk about it. Richard Grannon from Spartan Life Coach, he's really deep into the subject, and he can also walk you through the process of how you can catch yourself spiraling down, having a crash, CPTSD crash, when you feel like everything is fine. I actually made a video about it called Summertime Sadness, I believe. When you're spiraling down, but there's no reason, like the day is beautiful, birds are chirping, sun is shining, and suddenly you just start feeling icky. Something happens, usually in those moments. For instance, a car drives by, makes a certain sound, or you see a corner of the street that reminds you of something that gets associated in your subconscious mind with an abuse or with an abuser, and then you begin to feel all those icky emotions. It's a great opportunity to pause, hold those emotions, and let them just manifest and send them love. But back into our subject here. But first, this is super important, is when you feel that coming down on you, now this, I should definitely make a video about this, separate video, but when you feel this coming, no, there's nothing wrong with you. This is a flashback from the past. So just if you are aware of this one thing, that is going to make you instantly feel much better. So psychological and mental abuse, this is where the tricks and the antics of the abuser really shine. So what we have is the hallmark of the narcissist really shines here, because we're going from instances of rejection and put downs, ranging from very direct to very subtle, right? And then on the other side, the flip side of being kind and being your soulmate and presenting themselves as the person that they have been waiting for, right? Which is usually what happens in the beginning, early stages of narcissistic relationships, where the person idealizes you, when they tell you all the wonderful things you want to hear, right? And you get really used to that feeling. It surges, all these emotions, all these chemicals begin to release, like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and a whole bunch of others, right? So you get flooded with these pleasure chemicals and you feel so wonderful because, life throws a bunch of curveballs in our direction. So it can get tough at times. And then you meet this person and you feel like, oh my God, now I have all the strength, because once you feel all those emotions flooding you, you suddenly feel like you can take on the world, right? You probably, it happens to me, I always lose weight and I look in the mirror, I look beautiful, and and I start to just want to do all the good things for myself, and I wake up full of energy, I don't need as much sleep, and this and this and that. And then the first moment comes when they do what? When they tell you something negative. When they make a remark like, whoa, you're not driving very well today, or what's wrong with your hair? Something subtle could be like that, or it could be, like, why aren't you, like, you were supposed to be here an hour early, and you're like, no, like, I came here exactly when you asked me to. Like, no, I told you, which is a form of gaslighting, right? When they tell you something that isn't true, it's just a very insidious form of a lie that makes you feel like you're crazy. So anyway, we start to go back and forth between the positive and kind, and then flipping into the negative and critical side of the abuse, and that begins to escalate. And oftentimes it's really hard to pinpoint, but you feel that something's off. Your body always tells you, you just feel something's off, but you can't quite tell. And because, now here's this important, because you have been trained since childhood to ignore those feelings, to ignore your intuition, and to put a smile on a sad face, you tend to do the same thing, because you're like, okay, well, maybe I'm imagining this, maybe I'm exaggerating. My favorite one happened to me all the time. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I'm too sensitive. Since I was little, I've been always told, too sensitive. I was too sensitive, and I was philosophizing. So I was trying to get down to the root of things, like, why are you saying this? What does this mean? Hey, you philosophizing, shut up, just leave, right? So when you feel that something is off, trust that. Trust that intuition, trust that feeling, because you're very likely right. Another sign you're being psychologically, mentally abused is you feel drained, you feel exhausted, because every time you try to bring up and rationalize and try to understand what has happened, you enter what's called a word salad or crazy making conversation, in which you're going to be making all these loops. You're going around and around the subject, never really focusing on the issue that you had brought up, because the narcissist or the psychopath, the problematic person, are super skilled at taking the issue that you have brought up, and rather than focusing on it, turning on your reaction. Right? I used to remember all the time, like, oh, you're so reactive. Why are you so defensive? Look at you, look at you. What are you trying to tell me? That I did something? No, look at how you're behaving right now. Look at all these tears. And anyway, they begin to denigrate and denigrate, make you feel like there's something really crazy with you. So it becomes a loop that you can't escape. And because you're so exhausted and drained, usually the easiest way to exit is to just admit it and say, okay, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. How many times have you done that? How many times have you apologized for something you haven't done? This is the domain. This is where it happens. So what does this create is what's called cognitive dissonance. So you're in love with this person, but yet they're treating you terrible. You remember all these times when they have treated you like their princess or prince, and now they're treating you like a doormat, like crap. And you miss those feelings, you miss those early times, so you try to do anything and everything you can in order to get back to that point. What this does is your brain is put in a position to hold two opposing points of view, two opposing concepts. On one hand, this is a monster, they're abusing me. Your body is protesting. You're starting to get tired. Maybe you're developing some aches. Maybe you are just, if you have a chronic disease, maybe it's exacerbating, right? On the other hand, you're like, well, but they had a hard time too, right? They had a hard childhood too. They too have been abused. I can't stand how much material is coming out now defending the narcissists, trying to rationalize that, they themselves have been treated poorly. Imagine being raised in a traumatic environment. Well, so were we. Hello, so were we. So were the codependents. We were both raised in really difficult situations, but being abused does not give anyone the right to continue the abuse. Unfortunately, as you probably already know or have figured out, there's no way to really change the narcissist unless they want to do it themselves. There's nothing we can do, and the best thing we can do, not to waste our time and energy, is to focus on ourselves. So let's see. So we have cognitive dissonance, creates terrible mental stress, and yeah, this just feels awful. And I know if you've been there, and if you're going through this right now, because it takes a while to heal. It takes months, at least months, and the more you work on it, the faster you'll heal. The more you work on it, the faster you heal. If you try to distract yourself from the emotional healing that you need to do, it's going to take you that much longer. Okay, let's move on to the next one.